And welcome back to Coast. George Noory with you. Let me introduce our two special guests for you tonight. Pastor Paul Begley is back with us, fourth-generational preacher following after his father, grandmother, great-grandfather. Pastor Paul hosts a weekly telecast of the coming apocalypse on the World Harvest Television Network on DirecTV, Channel 367. And this reaches over 40 million homes throughout North and South America. Paul, welcome back. How have you been?
I'm doing great, George. Great to be back on with you.
Looking forward to this night tonight. And let me introduce Troy Anderson, a Pulitzer Prize-winning and nominated investigative journalist, best-selling Faith Works and Hatchet author, senior editor of Godspeed magazine, former executive editor of Charisma magazine and Charisma Media, reporter at the Los Angeles Daily News, and a frequent guest on numerous television and radio programs. Troy, you're all over the place. Welcome back.
Hey, George. It's great to be back on the show.
Good to have you with us. Let's start with you, Paul. Why does it seem that everybody's so concerned about the solar eclipse?
Well, anytime, George, if there is a celestial event like this, people don't know what that might mean. Is it an apocalyptic event? Is it a prophetic sign? Is it a warning? Is it a blessing? I mean, so people are very, very curious. And the fact that it's the second one in less than 7 years across America, this one's special. This one truly is special. And from my perspective, it is very divine and very enlightening. So I think we should pay close attention to what's going to happen in the next few hours.
There's a comet coming called the Devil Comet. What's the significance of that?
Well, we can take you back to 1811. And in that year, there was a partial lunar eclipse 2 weeks before there was a total solar eclipse across America that had also the Great Comet that was in the sky at the same time. And not long after these events took place, the eclipse took place, there was 3 of the biggest earthquakes America's ever had. On December 16th of that year, 1811, all of them in the New Madrid fault line, and followed by another mega quake again in January of 1812, and then finally in February of 1812, the biggest one of all, 8.8, reshaping the Mississippi River, pushing the water back. The river ran backwards 3 hours, completely devastation of anything we've ever had in America. So here we are again. We just had a partial moon eclipse 2 weeks ago. We have the total solar eclipse, and there's a comet, a devil's comet. It's 12P Pons Brooks. It's coming around the sun, and we will see this with the naked eye in the shadow of the moon in a few hours, only during the eclipse. I don't want to say we've got catastrophes coming, but, here we go again.
Here we go again, indeed. And Troy, let me ask you this. The convergence of that August 21st, 2017 eclipse and the one tomorrow forming a giant X in the middle of America, close to Carbondale, Illinois, also known as Little Egypt, by the way. What makes this location the focal point, and how does it tie into broader perspectives?
Yeah, George. So the 2017 eclipse went through a number of towns called Salem across the country. And now this new eclipse tomorrow goes through a number of towns called Nineveh. I mean, who knew there was a bunch of Ninevehs in America?
Yeah.
And the middle point where these two eclipses meet, this gigantic X in the middle of America, is in Carbondale, Illinois, also known as Little Egypt. And so this area, has a town called Cairo, the college, their mascot dog, the Saluki, the dog of the pharaohs. There was a famine there back in the 1800s, and sort of all this Egyptian symbolism. And, of course, that all harkens back to, Moses and the 10 plagues of Egypt. And the other interesting thing about this eclipse is that if you overlay the 2017 with the 2024 it's coming up with the one last year, the annular eclipse, it forms the Paleo-Hebrew letters Aleph and Tav, or Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end, the last name or the name of Jesus Christ in the last book of Revelation. And we've also got So it's sort of all this biblical symbolism. And I did this interview with Billy Graham back in 2013 for this 7-part WorldNet Daily series, and he said, when God sent the prophet Jonah to Nineveh to warn them of judgment, the king and the people repented. And he said he believed the same thing could happen again today in America. So we actually just wrote a story for Charisma magazine called The Great North American Eclipse. Is this America's Nineveh moment?
That's fascinating. And you worked for WorldNet Daily, our buddy Joe Farah. He's a great guy.
Oh, yeah. Great news outlet.
Sure is. Now, Pastor Paul, I've been told that there are some kind of outbreeds of locusts all over the place. Isn't that kind of biblical?
Yeah, I would say so, George. And what's going to happen in the same area, Little Egypt, they're in the Carbondale, Illinois area. There are 2 different breeds of cicadas, one that comes out every 13 years and one that comes out every 17 years. Well, this hasn't happened since the year 1803, that both breeds are going to come out at the same time in the exact same area that X marks the spot across America with these 2 eclipses. And this will create trillions and trillions of cicadas, locust-type insects that will be covering Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, that whole New Madrid area there. And, yes, Egypt, the biblical plague of the total darkness, the pyramid that's only about 60 miles away over towards St. Louis, the locust coming from the ground, the solar eclipse, the partial moon, the devil's comet. I mean, really, you couldn't make this up. It's really an incredible biblical event in the heart of America. And so we've been studying this. Troy and I, of course, we wrote this book, Revelation 9/11, to pull together all of the biblical symbolisms and events that are happening. And we take a look at the Middle East. There's other stuff happening, but wow, this is certainly a biblical resemblance.
Troy, what was your initial reaction when Pastor Paul came up to you and said, let's write this book called Revelation 911?
Yeah, so it was a little over 2 years ago. I'd met Pastor Begley at a couple Hear the Watchman conferences, and he got a hold of me out of the blue and said the Lord had given this vision of Revelation 9:11. He'd seen these large red letters, Revelation 9:11, and so when he told me that, I actually flashed back when I was a little kid. I remember I grew up in a little town in Oregon, and my mom took me to the local hardware store, and there's a record rack there. And on that record rack was the Kiss Destroyer album. It was like 1978 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I talked my mom into letting me get that album, and I looked at that album, and it shows this picture of the Kiss guys. They're sort of striking this triumphant pose, and behind them the world's burning, or like an asteroid strike or a nuclear strike or something. And it's called Destroyer. And I think it's one of the greatest rock albums in history now. And so I flashed back to that picture, and so I prayed for 7 days, and I talked to my wife about it, and I thought, you know what, if this, because I've been investigating for like a dozen years, are we really moving into these end-time events the Bible talks about, and, written a number of books on this topic. And so I told him, yeah, why don't we write this book? I think it's important. God gave you this vision, and at that time, I wasn't even thinking about this eclipse. We had no idea the book was going to come out, shortly before this eclipse. And so, we teamed up to write Revelation 9:11, how the book of Revelation intersects with today's headlines.
Yeah, tell us, Pastor Paul, what you think about these headlines of things that are happening today, and they are just significant, and how that ties into biblical prophecy and the book.
Yeah, George, Jesus said in Luke chapter 21, verse 25 to 28, he said, there shall be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. There'd be distress of nations, or confusion, perplexity among nations, and the sea and the waves would be roaring, and men's hearts would even fail them. They would just start falling over sudden death syndrome, if you will, for fear of things coming on the earth. So when you look at today's headlines, we have, besides this incredible celestial combination of the sun, the moon, and stars, and even planet alignments, and different things happening. We also have the wars raging in Europe with Russia and Ukraine. We have the Middle East now after the Hamas on Israel. That certainly is, it's got the entire world in a state of uproar and concern, and really even tearing apart the very fiber between the relationship between the United States and Israel.
Yeah.
And then we see that we have situations developing, with lack of food and lack of development. We have technological advancements. We have so many headlines. We could talk about AI. We could go on and on and on. How there's this convergence, prophetic events, and headlines of today matching, overlaying. It's almost you would say it's impossible, other than the fact that the Bible has proven to be true time and time again. And then throw in the red heifers and the potential sacrifice of that, and the burning of the ashes of the heifer, and actually Hamas even saying that the reason they attacked Israel was they were afraid Israel was about to sacrifice this red heifer, which would then clear all the religious obstacles out of the way for the building of the third temple. So we're definitely in the team picture of the prophetic apocalyptic era. And so I think that's part of the reason that the book, God moved on me so strong, to say, hey, you have to write a book. You have to put all of these events together, along with the prophecies of the Bible, make it as simple as you can to help open the eyes of all the people. Just give them the opportunity to understand the events that are happening.
Pastor, since Israel was formed in 1948 as a nation, have you ever seen so much turmoil within that country as we are having today?
No. I mean, studying history, 1948, when we just got done with the Holocaust, of course. Israel becomes a nation. That was a prophecy that was 3,000 years old, came to pass. The Ezekiel 37, dry bones, coming back and becoming a nation. Then you have, of course, the Six-Day War of 1967. You have the Yom Kippur War of 73. But this, by far, without a question, is the pinnacle. As we have this attack on Israel, we have the whole world. We have riots in the streets. We have protesting going on. We have turmoil in the United Nations. We have a turmoil within the nation of Israel's political structure. As we speak right now, they're meeting right now as we're talking about the future of who the next prime minister will be. Should they hold the elections? Should they, America's holding meetings in the White House. Should we continue to back Israel? Or should we demand there be a change in leadership? Should we withhold funds from Israel? Should we pull back arms from Israel? Or should we continue to support them? I mean, no. Throw in the red heifers and the building of the third temple. And George, I've been there 11 times, and I was just there, and went to Shiloh where the heifers are. And I can tell you, I've never, ever seen anything so quickly and so powerfully and so prophetically coming together at the same time, and then here's the eclipse.
Exactly. And tell us the biblical reference of the heifers, if you would, Pastor.
Yes, in the book of Numbers, in the 19th chapter, God told Moses that he had to take a red heifer, and it had to be spotless. I mean, it had to be perfect. No white hairs, no red, no blemishes. And they were to offer this as a sacrifice. Burn it, and take the ashes, put it in water, and this would be used for purification, so that the priest, before they would go in and do any of their priestly duties and prayer, they needed to be pure. And if any person had been around a dead body or come through a cemetery or something like that, they need to be cleansed before ever going in the temple. Also, even the construction of the temple itself, first the tabernacle, then the temple, you had to use these ashes to purify it. So this was a commandment of God. This was an example, completely explained how to be done. Now, it has been done 9 times in history, George, 9 times. But it hasn't been done in 2,000 years. The temple was torn down in 70 A.D. So here you have 2,000 years later, Israel the people, children of Israel, were scattered all over the world. Even the language Hebrew itself was almost extinct. The odds of this coming back together was almost 1 in a billion times a billion. But miraculously, we've seen this incredible situation pulling it all together. There's even a prophecy by one of the Jewish rabbis in the year 1204 that God showed him that when the 10th red heifer is sacrificed, this will be the year of the Messiah. So right now, as I'm talking to you, the heifer is ready. They have 4 of them that qualify right now. They came from Texas. And so I'm in Dallas, Texas tonight, just waiting for the eclipse, and just a few miles from where the farm was where these heifers were born. And now the red heifers have come of age. So it is time to make a decision. Passover is just a few days away, and we're at the moment, the literal moment, where the decision is about to be made.
Troy, how does this affect you as a journalist? Have you ever come across things like this before?
I've been thinking about all these different things that are converging here. I don't recall any time in my life where I saw so many different things of a biblical nature. And, just in recent years, we've really seen this acceleration in prophetic events. And in Revelation 9:11, I went through and I listed 50 different signs that Jesus and the prophets told us would indicate we're moving into the end times. And if you compare those to today's headlines, it's pretty much every single one of them is in some stage of fulfillment or partial fulfillment. Here's a couple of examples. In Book of Revelation, it talks about the mark of the beast, where you can't buy or sell, Revelation 13. And so Today we find ourselves at this time where, for the first time in history, they have all the technologies. They have artificial intelligence, electronic banking, these push for digital currencies, a surveillance state, implants and electronic chips and those kind of things. And so for the first time in history, you could actually have this mark of the beast system. And it seems like, governments across the world are moving towards some kind of thing like this. Like you can go to some supermarkets now and just wave your hand and buy your groceries. And so, that's one example. Another one is the Book of Revelation talks about the 2 witnesses. They'll prophesy from Jerusalem. They'll be slain, and the entire world will see this happen. They'll lay dead on the streets of Jerusalem for 3 days. And so with billions of people with cell phones and smartphones, everybody in the world could see this now. So there's things like that. And of course, there's the verse about the image of the beast. Could that be some kind of artificial intelligence? Could the Antichrist be a transhuman artificial intelligence hybrid or something like that? So there's all these different things that are happening today that certainly seem like we're moving into that time of history.
Well, I was going to say, Troy, where's the direct evidence of the Antichrist? It's not, is he or she there yet?
A lot of biblical scholars and people I've interviewed believe that the Antichrist may be alive today. Somebody, a young person that's sort of waiting in the wings. The Bible talks a lot about the Antichrist, this master deceiver, this person of hard countenance that somehow managed to gain control of the world, consolidates power, and presides over a global dictatorship, essentially a totalitarian state. I remember Oxford and MIT and different prestigious universities have existential risk institutes, so they put out annual reports on the top threats facing humanity. Of course, it's things like nuclear war, extreme climate change, artificial intelligence run amok. But a couple of reports mentioned one of the top threats facing the world as a global totalitarian state. And that's what the Bible warns of.
Let's talk more about that when we come back in a moment. Their book is called Revelation 9:11. We'll be back in a moment with more. And welcome back to Coast. George Noory with you, along with Pastor Paul Begley and Troy Anderson, Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist, as we talk about biblical prophecy and, of course, the solar eclipse that's coming up in just a few hours now. Their book is called Revelation 9:11. Where do people get the book, Paul?
Amazon.com is a great place to go, but you can also go to Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, anywhere books are sold primarily, and it's really ready. And, when I first the title came not from me. It really came from the vision, but I didn't know what God was trying to say to me, George. Revelation 9:11. I picked up the Bible and went to the Revelation chapter 9, verse 11, and it said there was this creature, Apollyon, this destroyer, going to crawl out of the bottomless pit and was going to wreak havoc on the earth. And I heard the Lord speak in my spirit, the hour is coming, it's upon mankind. And so, and then the Lord said to me, write it down. And so that's what caused me to say, okay, I got to get serious about this. Something's happening. We're having a shift in reality now. It's not just biblical prophecies that one day will happen. They're happening now. And so the urgency really intensified.
And Troy, what kind of an impact did this have on you?
Yeah, I mean, writing this book has actually involved a lot of what's known as spiritual warfare. All kinds of different things happen, but one thing that's really personal is my wife Irene became very ill. She was hospitalized for 17 days. She had severe COVID pneumonia, severe sepsis, acute pancreatitis, stomach bleeding. The doctor told me she only had a 50-50 chance of living. So I asked Pastor Begley and his team to pray for her. Our Battery Ministries team prayed for her. Our family and friends prayed for her. And I believe God saved her life. She's doing very well today, and I believe God performed a miracle. And then after all this, we got this gigantic hospital bill, just gargantuan. And so we applied to the hospital. We sent them our tax returns, all our assets, everything. And I thought maybe they'd drop it by 25% or 50%, because we were asking ready to pray for this too. And then they came back and they forgave the entire hospital bill. So just these two huge miracles. And so even though those trials and tribulations, writing this book, also these big miracles, that was a big impact on my life.
That's fantastic. Pastor Paul, we know prayer works, but how does it work?
Well, it's faith. It's truly putting your faith in God, believing that His word that He says, and like what He says, if any two of you would agree, touching any one thing, it shall be done. So we believe in something we can't see. That's the Bible's interpretation of faith, is a substance of things you're hoping for, but it's an evidence of things you don't see. So it's it's an extraordinary thing, faith is. But when you pray with faith believing that God will stand over His word to perform it, then you can see miracles happen. Now, here's what's happened to me in my 40 years of ministry, George. Because I've seen God work many times. I've seen it with my grandmother, who was an incredible faith healer, and I've seen it in my father, and I heard the stories of my great-great-grandfather. But when I've seen it for myself, God doing miracles in prayer, there's two things happen. All right, God's real. His word is real. So then let's see what it says. Well, when you start looking at the prophecies, you don't like all of them, okay? I don't want nothing to do with the mark of the beast, to be honest with you. I don't want to see the Antichrist. I don't want nothing to do with it.
Right.
But I know it's real, and so I have to look at the scriptures clear-eyed, understand that these things are coming. Now, how do we prepare the people? And that's part of the reason for the book, really.
Knowing what you know, Pastor, does it scare you?
Sometimes. It really does. And demonically, you get challenged by the devil. And I'm not just saying in your mind. I mean, demons, demonic spirits will try to intimidate us, will try to create fear to where we will want to back away or not want to look any further. So there is a challenge here, but every time you lean back on God and trust in the Lord, then you realize, well, hey, it's going to be all right because He's always conquered Him before. So this give and take, this pull and tug, this joy and dread, these are very convoluted at times as a human mortal, but our faith is beyond what we see here. And so, yes, sometimes it does bring dread, sometimes it does bring fear, but we always win in the end if we keep our faith in God.
How about you, Troy? Does anything scare you here?
Well, I've been, investigating this stuff for a dozen years, and, I've been an investigative reporter now for 3 decades, and And I mean, there is a certain amount of trepidation about what we see happening in the world. But I just like Pastor Begley said, I always go back to, I just, my wife, I think it was 2016, she says, why don't you keep a journal of things that seem miraculous in nature in our lives? And so every time I'd pray and then we'd see God intervene, I'd write it down in some way. And this journal's now grown to about 180 pages, maybe like over 200 entries of just miracle after miracle in our lives. So whenever I feel some fear, feel some trepidation about what we see happening in the world, the future, I just think about how God brought me through all these amazing things for the last 6 years. And imagine if you kept a journal like that your whole life. It's a gigantic faith builder. So I think that in Scripture is the way that we can navigate these times ahead. Just draw close to God. He'll take us through.
Pastor Paul, we've been watching an asteroid called Apophis, which is going to come pretty darn close to Earth in 2029. What do you think of that?
Wow, I'm so glad you brought it up, because I have been, ever since it was announced in 2004 that this asteroid was coming. I've been watching, monitoring, studying Scripture. And in the book of Revelation, chapter 8, verse 8, it talks about two deep impacts that hit the Earth. And they're very, very catastrophic to the Earth. Wipes out a third of the ships in the sea, kills a lot of people. The first one causes what looks like a major tsunami and catastrophic event. The second one must hit land because it poisons the fresh water. It's even called wormwood in the Bible. I really believe as soon as this eclipse is over in the next few hours, you got to look right back to the heavens, because in 5 years and in 5 days, on Friday the 13th, April the 13th, this asteroid, Apophis, the god of chaos, this asteroid is coming. And now that they think that the formula, the calculation of pi may be off just a hair due to gravitational pull on the Earth and all the planets, it's supposed to come within 18,000 miles of the surface of the Earth, which is closer than the satellites that go around us at 22,000 miles. But if this pi calculation is off a fraction, there is the possibility this thing hits us. And even if it don't, George, it's too close. It's so close that the companion rocks that are coming with it, the debris that's coming with it, I truly believe this may be our Revelation 8 hour. Some kind of companion rocks or debris hits us and creates these two events. So, I mean, I'm watching it close. I mean, it's like number one on my list. And so when I start thinking of it's my "Are you serious?" moment. Okay, I mean, really, are you serious?
Troy, as an investigative reporter, what are your thoughts on this asteroid?
Yeah, I mean, there's been sort of two versions of official stories on this. You had the initial reaction when it was first detected, and they talked about how close it might come to us. And then there's been some books that came out. Dr. Tom Horn, the late theologian at Skywatch TV, he wrote that book, The Wormwood Prophecy, and quoted some different scientists who said that potentially it could hit the Earth. And so the official line now is it's going to come very close. But of course, even underneath some of our satellites. And so there's always that danger that, something could divert it, it could hit something in space. They don't think that's going to happen. But, the Bible does talk about this wormwood asteroid that impacts the planet probably during the tribulation. And so is this? We don't know for sure, but there's many different these asteroids that are flying through space. We've only detected a small percentage of them. So, my personal belief is that God holds all these things back. He holds back nuclear war. He holds back asteroids, and so prayer is very important in the protection of our lives and our planet.
Troy, we do a lot of discussions on this program on UFOs, fallen angels, the Nephilim. You've looked at all this prospectively as a journalist. What are your thoughts on those things?
Yeah, it's all very, very intriguing things. There's that interesting verse in Genesis that talks about the fallen angels mating with women, producing these Nephilim, these these giants, these super soldiers of the past, of the antediluvian world. Did they return at some point? The famous story of Goliath and that kind of thing. And then there was actually a journalist, we quote him in Revelation 9:11. He compiled all these old newspaper stories going back 200 years of Nephilim, of giants, of all kinds of strange things throughout America. And these huge creatures and stuff, skeletal remains, and supposedly the Smithsonian has kept this under wraps. But there's a lot of intriguing things going on, and then of course you have the whole UFO phenomena today, with so many people believe in UFOs and ET, and so we actually explore that in the book. And is there some kind of connection to the Nephilim? So polls show that I think it's 3 to 4 times many people now believe in the existence of ET than believe in God as He's revealed in the Bible, a biblical worldview. And so it's all very intriguing. The Bible talks about a powerful delusion, the great deception. So is this somehow part of all that?
What are your thoughts, Pastor Paul, on those breaking of the 7 seals as it's tied to everything?
Yeah, I think that the first 4 seals is what for apocalypse, or the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And I'm looking at those very intrigued by the fact that, you have first this white horse who's actually this global leader, this Antichrist we mentioned earlier, who conquers the world with a one-world government, a new world order, a new system. He's the biblical beast in the Bible. And I see the tracks being laid for that formation, obviously. I mean, it's like rapidly approaching us all around us, where there's a constant conversation of globalism, big bank, big pharma, big media. You go on, the military industrial complex, big space, big food. Everything, it seems to be these conglomerations of all of these major industries. And so you sense this globalism movement so strong, and almost as if we have a 2-class, an elite class or a governing class, a controlling class, and then the rest. And so we see this is right down the line of the Bible. You have the red horse of war. Again, when you talk about Ukraine, you talk about with the Russia-Ukraine situation, the Middle East, and then we got China breathing down Taiwan's neck. We got North Korea, Kim Jong-un wanting to go boom, boom, boom and attack everybody there. You just like Jesus said, wars and rumors of wars. The red horse is galloping. The black horse of food, the economy, distribution of food and water, the whole process. You see it now. When the war broke out in Ukraine and Russia, that's the breadbasket of the world. That's where the wheat and the barley's grown. It's affected the prices. Look at the inflation and the interest rates, the global inflation, even so much that now the central banking digital currency is in the process of being implemented. I've seen where Zimbabwe is about ready to go to a new currency in 21 days called the Zen Gold currency. And that's just the beginning of it. So we're watching really a rollout, if you will, of these first 4 seals, the 4th one being the plagues, the pandemics, the diseases, what we just went through with COVID and what's next. We have, at one hand, we hear Bill Gates tell us that disease X is just around the corner at 100 times worse than we just went through. So these are the first 4 of the 7. Are they all in play? Are the horses galloping? So in my opinion, we are watching the systematic breaking of these, and then the intensification of this will certainly continue.
The 3 of us, Paul, we weren't around during World War II. Have you ever seen and felt more strife than we have right now?
No, not George. That's a great question. No, not even close. We're so divisive. In America alone, we are so divided, so divisive, so much hatred, so much anger. People are angry and they don't even know what they're angry about. People are confused. They don't know why they're confused.
Yeah.
No, this is by far. And I was praying about this the other day. I said, Lord, why are everybody at each other's throat? Why can't where's the adults? When are they going to walk back in the room? How come Congress can't even agree on the simplest things? And where's this all going? And he reminded me when he showed me the vision of Apollyon coming out of the pit. He said, the master of confusion is about to be turned loose. You know, George, Lucifer we've been dealing with for a long time, ever since the dawning of the ages. He's the prince of power of the air. The Bible says Leviathan is the serpent of the sea. But this Apollyon character, he's the worst of them all. He's about to be released. He's the god of the underworld. And he's been bound in this bottomless pit, and he's about to be turned loose. So the divisiveness, the anger, the frustration, the whole thing is just, it's coming to a pinnacle. And it's sad. There's some good people in the world, but there's so much divisiveness. It's really sad.
We're going to come back and take calls with both of you next on Coast to Coast AM.
Wow, Kevin Sorbo, producer, director and actor in God's Not Dead and Left Behind, Rise of the Antichrist comments, Revelation 9:11 is an exhilarating ride. This book is unbelievable, a tour de force, the passion, the explosive insights into what is really happening today. I couldn't put it down. Pastor Paul Begley and Troy Anderson are prophetic voices for this generation. Anderson is amazing in his investigative analysis of things happening today, and Pastor Begley's revelations are incredible. It is, without a doubt, the prescient narrative of our time. Prepare to be captivated by the mysteries and prophecies unveiled within its pages. Get ready to embark on an unforgettable journey of spiritual insight and revelation. Don't miss out. Grab your copy of Revelation 9:11 now and delve into the depths of prophecy like never before.